Hi guys, it's Trevor Tolliver here, and you're listening to the Blue Day podcast.
Fellow Chelsea supporters, here at the Blue Day podcast, I am pleased to welcome our guest on the show today. He made 22 appearances for the club, scoring the one goal, but he played alongside the likes of Ron Chopper Harris, John Dempsey and Ray Wilkins. Here is Brian Bason. Brian, welcome to the show. How are you?
Yes, I'm very good. Thank you very much. Yeah, life's good.
Good. Glad you're okay. Nice to have you on the show as well. I know it's been a little bit of a sort of a long time scheduling to get it sorted, but no time like the present.
Yes, true. Very true. Yeah.
Well, we will kick it off now, Brian. I want to start the interview sort of as I've done with a few of the other players. What made you fall in love with football in the first place? Was it a particular player that you saw on TV, or was it school? What was it that made you fall in love with football?
To be totally honest, I don't really know what made me fall in love with football. I just ended up playing football and really, really enjoyed it. When I went to school, we were always Chelsea fans at that stage. And this might sound a bit corny, but we ended up making a team locally in Crawley called Chelsea Miners. And we actually write to the club to see if we could use the name. And they said we could. I mean, we played in the Chelsea kit, and that's how I started at 7 years of age, playing down in Crawley for a club called Chelsea Miners.
Brilliant. That's not a bad story. I like that.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. And then we used to win everything as well. We had a really good side. I was very fortunate. I was quite big for my age, and I was very quick and very strong. So, yeah, I stood out a little bit at that stage.
Who were your idols growing up?
Oh, I mean, the guy, I was lucky enough to end up playing with him, but the guy that, when I grew up, was my idol was Mr. Osgood, Peter Osgood, yeah.
Now, you started off as a youngster coming through the ranks at Chelsea. What was your experiences like in the early days?
Yeah, what happened was, again, playing for Chelsea Miners, I was 10 years of age. I was playing in a five-a-side final in Crawley. And at that stage, Marvin Hinton was a player that lived in Crawley. And he came to the game with Tommy Docherty. And on that night, he chose me to start training at Chelsea twice a week at the age of 10. So I used to go every Tuesday and Thursday. My father used to take me straight from work. And Frank Bluntstone at that stage was in charge. So we used to go to the bridge and we used to train underneath the walkway there underneath the East Stand and then round the Greyhound area and behind the goals as it was then.
And how did that make you feel in terms of being selected for that and then
it made me feel training? It was great. I was very, very fortunate, very lucky, and I enjoyed it immensely and learnt a lot.
Who was the best players that you played with in the time in the Chelsea youth setup?
Yeah, we were very fortunate. At that stage, it was a bit like the Man United because we had a great side and we won the football combination and we won the youth side at that stage. But yeah, people like Mr. Wilkins, Ray Wilkins, both the Graham Wilkins, Butch, Ian Britton, Gary Stanley, all these players, Steve Finiston, Ted Maybank, Derek Richardson, Steve Wicks, all good players. I'm very fortunate to have played with them.
No, there's a few stories I know from obviously their time with, especially with that young squad, sort of pretty much, as you said, won everything. Quite a few high score lines as well. To be fair, it was sort of like very one-sided. But the thing that I got from a few of the interviews that I had with certain other players was how close you guys were. In terms of you weren't just sort of teammates. You was pretty much like a band of brothers.
Yeah, we were. We used to do everything. I mean, we used to train 2 hours in the morning, and we used to go out and sort of play snooker. Or we used to play golf, or we used to do. We always used to do things together. Yeah, it was a very tight knit, very very good bunch of guys, and there wasn't anybody who was sort of out on felt they were better than anybody else. We were very very much together.
Now, I want to fast forward now to September of 1972. You would make your debut for the club against Sheffield United.
That's
when
right.
did you know that you would be part of the team? And how did the senior players sort of take to you with you?
Well, again, it was
Dave
Sexton was the manager. At that stage, I was doing I hadn't played really any combination games. I hadn't played any reserve games, but I was a winger and I was quite quick and big, as I said, for my age. So he wanted to have wingers. He was very much sort of looking to have wingers. So he then brought me into the first team squad and I started training with them. And then that week before the game, obviously there was a couple of injuries and I then found out I was playing. So then we sort of trained the week with me playing on the right-hand wing. So, yes, it was very nervous. But the only other good thing about playing Sheffield United at that stage, I'd played there for England schoolboys the year before. No, sorry, not the year before. 3 years before. And we played ERA, Republic of Ireland. We won 11-0. Oh, so it had good. And it was then where they had three sides of the stadium. It was the Yorkshire Cricket Ground. So they didn't have four sides to the football pitch. It was only three. One was completely open because that's where the cricket ground was. So, yeah, so it wasn't as in a football stadium like four-sided. It was three-sided. So it was, a little bit different.
You mentioned Dave Sexton there. He was in charge of the club at the time. It's been a while since Dave Sexton has actually been mentioned on the show, but what was Dave like as a person and as a coach to you?
Obviously, for me, because he brought me into the team, because I found him very good, and I found him a very good tactician from my point of view. But he obviously clashed very much with the more senior, more sort of players, with your Osgoods, your Hudsons, and that's when it all went pear-shaped at that time. But for me, but I was a very, very young lad who wanted to get on, and Chelsea were my team, and got nothing better than me playing out on the bridge, and especially when sort of looking next to me was Mr. Osgood and sort of Ronnie, and so it was just amazing time for me. I got on very well with Dave, and the other thing as well is because I come from Crawley, Dave came from Brighton. That sometimes he used to. It must have, when I look back at it now, it must have looked a bit weird because he used to give me lifts up to training and things like that. So it must have looked quite naughty at that stage.
You spoke about him earlier in terms of you idolising him when you was youngster, you was growing up. But you mentioned Osgood. What was it like for you to then be in the same team as him, playing for the club? You supported?
No. Yeah, it was it was a dream come true in that sense. But yeah, they were all great lads. Your Ian Hutchinsons and all that. And then what happened one year is we were lucky enough. They took us, few of the young lads, away to Australia for a tour, end of season tour. And just the little stories that the first we stayed in Darwin, and we're staying in the hotel. And obviously we get our rooms in the morning. We go to check out, and I'm looking and I asked for my bill, and my bill was enormous. And what the lad Ozzy and all the lads had done, and they got themselves a few bottles of champagne and all signed it in my name. And my bill was, I just, I was what. So Mr. Sexton, Dave Sexton, then sort of said, "Look, you can't do this again," and got them to pay for it. So, it was. But that's the sort of thing they used to do. Well, I expect they probably do it these days as well. But yeah, that was a sort of a intro into the first team of going away and doing things. But yeah, it was wonderful time though. We had a great time over there. Yeah,
that's great. You would make a handful of appearances for Chelsea this particular season. You was also involved in a win over Tottenham, which is always good. You're always good to beat your rivals. Was you happy with this point at your stage of your career in terms of the amount of games you would play or how much you would be involved with Chelsea?
Yeah, I mean, I played my first senior game just before my 17th birthday and just before I signed pro. So I think I signed pro probably about 2 weeks before I played the Sheffield United game. So I was very, very young and very ignorant. And I think looking back on it now, at my age, I just think I was probably too young at that stage. It was too early for me. And so, I mean, that game at Tottenham was wonderful. I can remember it as if it was yesterday. I helped make the goal. We won 1-0. So yeah, it was, and the team Tottenham had out with your Mike Englands, your Pat Jennings, and all that, Martin Chivers. It was just a special. Steve Perryman. It was a special day again. But I mean, I went to the game with Ronnie Harris. I went in his car and he took me home afterwards. So yeah, that was a, again, another special day. But yeah, I just think I was too young at that stage, really. So I then played in a few other games. I think I played against Newcastle at home where we drew 1-1. And there's a few other games I can remember. But yes, it was good and it was a great experience. I just think at that stage it sort of knocked me back a little bit, as in confidence and things. So yeah, but realistically, yeah, I was probably too young.
Because when I was doing research on you, Brian, and I was having a look at your stats and I was having a look at certain games, it would be for nearly 2 years that you wouldn't be involved in the first team as well. So obviously this was in part, obviously, what you said about the confidence thing. Was you worried that your chance may have gone, or you may have had to move to develop your game, or did you feel that you'd bide your time and stay and see how it goes?
I was a Chelsea boy, so there wasn't any thought of me going anywhere or thinking because I wasn't playing I wanted to leave. Yes, I was playing regularly in the combination side, the reserve side. We ended up winning the football combination, that league, the following year. Again, we had some really good players. The kids, again, they were all there. And everybody else was then getting the chances. And then the following year, Eddie McCready became the combination manager. And that's where Eddie sort of got a look at me. And I don't think he particularly fancied me at the beginning. And sort of but I think I proved to him there was a certain amount of ability in me that could be good. So I think that's what helped me when I then became a regular in the first team with Eddie, when Eddie became manager.
Well, I was going to say, Eddie would then become the Chelsea manager, and it was a little bit of a sort of turns out to be a popular decision amongst the players, but also amongst the fans. You mentioned, obviously, with Eddie sort of knowing you from the Combinations League. Was it good then for you that he got the job, knowing that he'd know what you was like, and it was more of a advantage to you?
Yeah, I suppose. Looking back at that time, I didn't think of it that way, and I didn't know. I didn't know that he particularly liked me at that stage. It's just that when he then became manager, I became involved with the first team again, and I was part and parcel of his plans, and it just gave me a huge amount of confidence. So yeah, it was. I mean, it was good for. Yeah, I felt it was good for me, but wasn't thinking of that at that stage as a player. I just felt that. I suppose I felt that I had more of a chance of them playing again, but I never had any thought in my head the previous year about leaving or wanting to leave the club. I suppose I wasn't a moaner, I wasn't a groaner. Yeah, I would love to have played. I wanted to play, but I wasn't moaning because I wasn't.
Right. Because it would turn out the first game of the 75-76 season, Chelsea were at home to Carlisle United.
Yeah, yes.
You were selected to start. We are going to talk about that goal, by the way. You were selected to start. How relieved was you that you was being able, basically, to have a second chance in the first team?
Yeah, of course. I mean, again, it was a funny time for the club as well. The new East Stand had just been built. It was all sort of where there was sort of the big changes of all the big guys had gone. The club had gone down into the second division. It was, and Chelsea have always been a big club. They've always been a big London club, and so there was quite a bit of weight on the boys' shoulders at that stage. And we had all been brought up together. We'd all played it. So we were very much of a close close. And then we had your David Hayes, your Ronnies, your Mickey Droys, your Peter Bonettis, and all that, the senior players. But so it was a good mixture in that stage. It was a good atmosphere. So yeah, and the only other thought that I had, because the previous year Chelsea had played Carlisle at home and lost 2-0. So that there was that sort of thought in my head when we played the game. So
now we have believe it is on YouTube. There is obviously the clips of the highlights, but also it was part of the big match revisited that you could find on ITV4 in the UK. So if you can find it, have a look at it. What was the atmosphere like for you? But again, being a Chelsea boy and being part of that, because again, when I've seen clips of Chelsea from the 70s, the atmosphere was just something else. It's not like not like today. Obviously, back then it was a lot better, but everyone was standing. Hardly anyone was sort of in their pretty much in their seats, and just constant singing for 90 minutes. What was it like for you to be sort of involved in that on a regular basis?
Yeah, tremendous, absolutely tremendous. It was just you used to enjoy playing at home. You used to enjoy, you weren't under any pressure. We had super support, and they still do now. I mean, it's just great support. The club's always had good support.
Now, we've mentioned about the Carlisle game. Tell me about the goal. What was your first reaction when you first hit it? Was you surprised that how well it pretty much went in?
Everybody talks to me about the hop, about what I did to my leg before, because I don't know if you watch it on telly, you can see Ted got whacked on the sideline, Teddy Maybank, and then what happened was I got the ball, and I don't know if anybody's ever done it, walked down the street and gone over on your foot in a hole, and you just go over on your ankle, and it really hurts for like 30 seconds, whatever, and then you manage. So what happened was, if you watch it again, I play the ball with my left foot, which I don't play very often, to be honest, and I went over on my ankle. And it was one of those where it really hurt. And then you saw me limping. And then Ian Britton got the ball, played it to me. Yeah, and it was just an instinct thing to do. I can always strike a ball, or used to be able to strike a ball really, really well. So, so I just thought I'd have a go. Yeah, to score at the bridge was special. I'd like to have been at the other end, but it was the shed end, but it wasn't. So. But no,
it was a fabulous finish, because I remember again when I was doing research, and even before that, when I've got sort of those DVDs and clips and whatever, and it was just a great strike, and I'm like, what? That was his only goal. I was like, wow, it's just to have that as your only goal. That has got to be something special. It's not like a
everybody, because everybody remembers it. Yeah, everybody remembers it. So, yeah, it's good. Everybody remembers that Carlisle goal. But so it's nice in that sense. Yeah, it's always nice to look back on.
And even after that game, you had a consistent run in the team as well. You was playing pretty much week in, week out. This must have given your confidence such a boost, and knowing that you was involved, not just because there's no one else available, but because you was one of the first names on the team sheet at that stage.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, again, with all the lads there, that we'd all come through the youth team and this, that, and the other, and the atmosphere. And again, we were playing well, and we were getting results. So, confidence was high, and so it was good. It was a good time.
And you mentioned before about with Ron Harris and Peter Bonetti, but you were still considerably young compared to the other guys in the dressing room as well. So again, that must have helped you, being able to be sort of supported by the elders in the dressing room. Yeah.
A special guy, to be honest, at that stage, senior guys, was a guy called, David Hay. And I can remember when I was being apprentice, and I remember David playing for sort of Scotland in the World Cup, in the 1974 World Cup, and thinking what a good player he was. And then I found out Chelsea had bought him. He was a superhuman being. He was a nice guy, very, very helpful.
Speaking of helpful players, and one person that forever be a legend in a lot of people's eyes, is Ray Wilkins. And at the
Oh,
time where you was involved in the team, he was actually the captain
he
of the
was.
side. What was your thoughts on Ray? Not obviously not just as a person, but as a captain. And if anybody that obviously didn't see him play, what sort of type of captain material would he do? Was he much of a talker, or was he more of
Yes, yes. No, no,
in
no.
the dressing room only,
He,
rather than?
no, he was very much very vocal on both sides, but very positive vocal. He never moaned at you, never complained, never. He'd always see the positive side of anything, and so yeah, he was super in that sense. I mean, he was way above his age.
Did you notice that in him in his younger time, again when you were sort of playing in the youth setup and you was involved with the likes of Ray and Graham? Did you see that he could potentially become that particular
Yes,
type of
yeah. I
captain?
mean, he was. He was so cool. When I say cool, he was so confident. He could strike a ball with any foot. Any situation, and he could read the game so well. And yeah, he was a special guy, special player. So yeah, it was a pleasure to play with him.
It got to a stage, obviously, at this time where Chelsea wasn't getting promoted. Was you a little bit concerned, or more frustrated, I should say, that Chelsea wasn't getting that sort of promotion charge? They weren't going up to the first division at this point.
Yeah, that's. But I only I ended up breaking my leg, which you probably might end up talking about.
It, yeah.
Yeah, and at that stage, yeah, I was out the side for at least 6 months, and then the following year, it's when it started to go pear shaped again. When Ken became, because at the end, I was sent to America to get fit. I played for Vancouver Whitecaps to get myself fit, and then at that stage, Eddie had left the club. I then went back to Chelsea, and obviously Ken didn't fancy me, didn't, and I wasn't involved at all that season, which was frustrating in that sense. I don't mind managers not fancying you, but all I'd like to have been given was a chance. And if I hadn't taken my chance and I wasn't good enough, then fair enough, I walk away, but not be given the chance. That was frustrating for me in that sense.
We'll talk about that in terms of that game. I believe it was against Arsenal in the League Cup where you suffered the broken leg. What was going through your mind at this point? Did you feel that your progression as a footballer might stall? Was there something of whereby I can
what is this
from this?
What with the break?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. It's it didn't immediately. I think that way because I've never really thought about breaking my leg. But afterwards, and when I was trying to sort of get fit, I then started to get frustrated with things like that. Yes, I did get a bit of frustration. So, but just going back to Butch, to that night when I broke my leg, when I got hit, Ray came straight over to me and said, "Get up, don't let him see you hurt." So I tried standing on it, and it was like a needle going through me. And and Arsenal were the only club at that stage that had sort of X-ray machines in their dressing rooms. So straight away, I knew I had a double fracture of the right leg. So,
wow.
Yeah. So that night I knew that but it didn't really hit home to me sort of what impact it would have on me. Because I lost a little bit of speed, I suppose I put on a little bit of weight, and so I can understand them letting me go eventually, but it was frustrating, and it was I've always been a Chelsea boy, and I've always will be a Chelsea boy, and so it's frustrating. It was frustrating at that time
because when I was again looking back on the timelines and looking back on certain stats, it would only be, for example, like a number of months later that you would leave the club to join Plymouth Argyle.
Yeah.
How did that move come about? And just sort of bearing in mind with the context we've just spoke about, was you still injured at the time that you left Chelsea for Plymouth, or was you fully fit?
I was fully fit. But when I came back from America, it was for the season when Ken was manager, and I was fully fit that whole year. Right. And all I played was reserve games. As I said, Ken wouldn't. I wasn't even training with the first team. I wasn't even part of it. So, right. And then what happened was Eddie, Ken. I'm just trying to think who the guy was at Plymouth now. Can you believe this? Mike Kelly was the manager at Plymouth, and I went down on loan for a month to begin with. And I just wanted to play football then at this stage. You know, I just wanted to get onto a pitch and play with X amount of thousand people watching me. So I went down and they wanted to buy me, and then Ken decided to sell me, and that was it. Sad time in that way, really, because I never really wanted to leave Chelsea.
Did you have any conversations with Ken about your feelings, about your preference to stay at the club?
I wasn't a moaner, Keith. I wasn't somebody who would go knocking at the door and saying, "Why wasn't I playing? Why wasn't I doing this?" Yeah, I suppose I was just sort of, I accepted it. You know, he didn't want me in the side, and there was no point, and he didn't fancy me as a player. So, you know, there are managers who fancy people and players that they don't fancy. So that's how it goes about. So I thought I just need to do something to sort of start playing first team football.
Now, we'll discuss current events now in terms of what's happening in today's football. And one thing that has caused a little bit of controversy, and will probably always will, is VAR. Now, Brian, what's your take on the software? Are you against it? Are you for it? If there's anything that you would probably change, what would it be?
What my feelings is it's quite weird because there's a lot of controversy now on the rugby side of things. I just think that I like the way the rugby does it. As in, there is a guy watching the game, and if there's something goes on off the ball, he will let the referee know, and the referee will then take the playback or do whatever. So, but it's getting the consistency of people's judgment on what happens, as in, you know, what is and what isn't, and what's offside, what isn't offside. So yes, I do believe in VAR, but it needs to be much more, and I still think they need players to be VAR, because players know what goes on in a game. People know when somebody's faking it or falling over or jumping or doing whatever. And I just think there are people who think they know what it is, and it's not. But yeah, at the moment, VAR is a joke. It's more harmful to the game than it is good at this moment in time, in my opinion.
I think with the way it's looking, and I spoke to a couple of other ex-players about this, it's just got to a stage where it's more used for entertainment purposes or drama. It's not used for sporting context anymore. It's like there was a game a few, it might have been last week or the week before. It took 5 minutes to make a decision, or over 5 minutes to make a decision. That's not what VAR was brought in. It was brought in to make the correct decision, but effectively and quickly. Not not over 5 minutes. And even the fact that fans, when they go to the game, doesn't know what's happening. At least in rugby, as you say, the referee, you can hear what the referee's saying. And even on TV, you can hear what the referee's saying. So I think that would help definitely the match-going supporters. But as you say, VAR, unfortunately, is probably here to stay. But is it a good thing that it's going to stay? Time will tell.
Yeah, they just need to. They just need to improve it, don't they? They need to sort of, I don't know, because they're making too many mistakes. It's the results of football matches at the moment can be determined by VAR, and that's wrong.
Managers losing their jobs,
players, because everybody's under pressure in that sense. And all they do is say, "Oh, we've made a mistake," let's move on to the next game, and it's I think VAR's a waste of space at the moment. I believe in it, but not as it is now.
Speaking of waste of space, at times we'll talk about Chelsea of today, of 2023. Little bit of a patchy season so far. There's been some decent performances, but the results have not been consistent. New manager in Mauricio Pochettino. Me personally, I feel a little bit sorry for him for what he's had to put up with the regime. But what's your take on it, Brian? What's your sort of take from sort of seeing Chelsea of this modern time and
Yeah, I thought it was a good move to get Pochettino in. Always thought he's been quite a good manager. But again, going back to when we were talking about when I started and playing, there was a lot of senior players. Where at the moment, I think with Chelsea, they're all quite young. There are some good players, but there's nobody of senior to sort of unless it's Mr. Silva, but he can't do everything. You should have a good balance of senior players and young players, where I think most of the players now at this moment in time are quite young and quite, they haven't got the experience of being in the situation they're being in now, and they're totally under pressure. But I think the money spoilt the game to a certain degree.
And it'll be interesting what happens with Chelsea, whether they win a trophy this season or one of the domestic cups at least, or how they'll get on if they reach top four. If they don't reach top four, what could happen with Poch? What could happen with some of the players? Are Chelsea going to spend big again in January? There's rumours of us trying to spend another 200 million. It's just complete and utter. It just seems chaos at the moment at Chelsea. And even that's without the results on the pitch.
Yeah, and again, we go back to the injury. They don't seem to have a consistency of players where they can pick the same players week on week. And sort of the team changes constantly because of injuries.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. We'll obviously... We'll either be more stressed between now and May, or we'll be actually a little bit more pleased. We shall see. But
well, it either makes my weekend or it destroys my weekend. The result.
Not just us, but our families as well. It has to. We'll have to put that as well. Final question, Brian, from me. And again, thank you for being on the show today. How do you look back on your time at Chelsea?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was, when you look back at the 1970 FA Cup winning side and you look at players of Bonetti, Osgood, Harris and that, and I can say I played with them at Stamford Bridge in the first team is just enormous. I've got some great memories, and they will never be taken away from me. And as we say, once a blue, always a blue, and I will always be blue. And I have some wonderful, wonderful memories with me playing with some great players.
Beautifully put, Brian. That was lovely. Thank you very much for coming onto the show. It'll be great to see you back at the Bridge one day, hopefully quite soon. And
yes, I'm back in December. I'm coming to the Crystal Palace game and the Sheffield United game.
Oh, lovely!
So, coming back for Christmas.
Okay, well, hopefully, you'll enjoy the game and won't be too stressed out and thinking, no, I'm not going back for a while after that. But thank you very much for coming onto the show, Brian. It's been a pleasure, and all the best.
Thanks very much, Keith. Pleasure. Thank you.